Welcome to the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now, your host, Josh Grund.
What's going on, guys? We are back with our third episode of the Roost Podcast. Pretty excited about this one. This is going to be part 2 of the last episode where we talked for like 2 hours and we got into a ton of turkey hunting stuff. And in this one, we talk about e-scouting. We get into turkey calls, kind of some hunting strategy stuff, and just kind of go through the whole gamut of turkey hunting things. So if you guys are excited about turkey season, if you guys are as pumped about it as we are, this is a great episode to listen to. We're probably going to dive in a little deeper on some of these topics in the future, so stay tuned for that. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this one. So without further ado, let's get into it.
But yeah, how do we find these big 5-year-olds?
What's that?
How do we find these big 5-year-olds? That's what we really want to know. That's the answer.
How do we find these big 5-year-olds? Well, you got to find them where they live. And one of the ways to do that is e-scouting.
This is new for me. I'm excited for this topic.
You don't know e-scouting?
No. I go by scouting of, oh, that looks like a nice ridge. It'd be on. There's some pine trees up there. There's big timber. They might roost up there.
So do you know what e-scouting stands for, though?
Electronic scouting.
Very good, yeah. So using maps to your
Yes.
advantage to find where turkeys are. So, geez, Bryce, I thought
It's never e-scouted for, man. That's
so
fresh sign.
yeah, e-scouting is a awesome tool because what it does for you is keeps you from, you can take 100 acres or 1,000 acres, do some e-scouting and narrow it down to like 5 or 6 spots so that when you go do put boots on the ground, you don't have to walk 1,000 acres. Like, just go to those 5 spots and you'll probably find stuff if you know what you're looking at on an aerial photo.
Okay. I like the sound of that already.
Yeah, so the important thing with e-scouting is, you want to use a good map service. Google Maps, I think, does have topo lines. You want to be able to see elevation changes.
That's what I really want to know.
Yes.
Because I'm digging with a lot of elevation down where I public hunt.
So you want to be able to see elevation. You want to be able to see actual photo, like aerial photo. So you want to be able to see like the land coverage types.
Like the hybrid maps.
Yeah, the hybrid maps, Hunt Stand and HuntWise. And like I said, you can just use Google. What's nice about having those Onyx maps or those other apps is you can see property lines too.
Right.
Keep you out of trouble. Yeah, huge. But what I'm looking for, if I got a 1,000-acre block of woods, what I'm looking for when I get on the computer is multiple habitat types coming together. So you got
diversity. Okay.
So, if you look at like Wayne National Forest and you look at a lot of those maps, it's just a monoculture of forest. Right?
Right.
And you'll find some turkeys there, but you're going to do a lot better if you can find those locations where, an old growth forest butts up to like an old clear cut, which butts up to a new clear cut, which butts up to, maybe a creek bottom, which butts up to
a swamp. Yeah,
a swamp, and maybe there's some crop fields within a quarter mile too.
Okay.
And you have all that different diversity, you're going to find more turkeys, you're going to find more deer too.
No, for sure.
That's what you want to look for, that and water. If you can find creeks or ponds, that's going to be a necessity as well. But it's really that simple. And the more you look at maps and the more you do it, the better you're going to get it. So the other really important thing is looking at topography, right, on top of those different, habitat types. So you're talking about the Wayne National Forest. Turkey are going to use that topography to their advantage. And
Correct.
You can almost look at a map and guess where those birds are going to be roosted. So when it comes to like hilly southern Ohio is tons of big hills, right?
Right.
What those birds tend to do, they don't roost on the top. They don't roost down in the bottom. What they tend to do is they'll walk the top of the ridge and they'll fly straight out. So they'll end up, about a third of the way down the hill on a tree. And turkeys, just like deer, just like people, we're all lazy creatures. Those turkeys don't want to have to fly up into the tree if they don't have to. They'd rather fly straight across or drop down into it.
Just glide.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Conserve
in the morning,
energy.
they just fly right down to the top of the ridge. So a lot of times, that's what I tell guys a lot, like especially in southern Ohio, if you have a bird roosted and he's out at the end of a ridge, if you can get to the tip of that ridge in the morning.
At the bottom.
At the top.
At the top.
Yes.
He's going to want to fly uphill?
Well, I mean, it depends on how far down the hill he roosted, but, if he's got an easier flight down to the top of the ridge, I mean, they're not always going to do the same thing, but I've seen them do it a bunch of times where they fly down almost the same place that they pitched up from. They might pitch over to, the ridge over, but if you can get to the ridge that he's roosted on, he flew up from that, so he can fly down to it. You're going to be in a lot better spot calling to him on the roost and getting him to come your way, if that makes sense.
Oh.
He doesn't have to drop 100 foot down to the bottom of a creek bottom. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to just pitch right out to the top.
Couple flaps and right back.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So
I thought it'd be opposite. You think they just glide down easy?
No.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That property I used to hunt down southern Ohio that butted up to a big public. There was 2 ponds in the bottom, and there was a hunting spot there that we would try, and we were kind of successful on it. But the other spot was above those ponds, and that was where I killed that big one, and we killed a lot of turkeys up there. They'd fly right to the top spot, nothing up there. There was some good hillside thick cover that would go right to the ponds. You'd see them walk right down there. They'd get water right back up.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So topography is a big one. Those toms will, turkeys will kind of go everywhere, but they'll use, if I'm setting up to like call a bird all day in an area like southern Ohio, I'm going to probably pick the top of a ridge or like a saddle or something where a bunch of ridges come together. Because those turkeys will use the tops of those ridges to cruise and look for hens. Or those are 2 things to definitely keep in mind, though, if you're going to e-scout. The third thing that I got the third and fourth thing that kind of go together, if you're doing any e-scouting, would be to pay attention to your access, right, and pay attention to how much access is there. So if I'm taking a trip down to Kentucky, one of the first things I'm going to look at is, how many parking spots are there along this road? Because usually that's going to correlate with how many people use it, right? So if you go to like West Branch, there's a pull-off every 200 feet around that public land. And opening day of turkey season, you bet your butt there's going to be a truck parked at every one of them.
Oh my god!
So that tells me I'm good. Like I don't need to go there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So making sure that you have good access. If you find a spot that's got all the habitat types merging together, you got a pretty good ridge system where you think those birds might be roosting, but you got to park at the bottom and walk up the ridge underneath those turkeys to get to where you can hunt them. That's no good. So definitely part of e-scouting is being able to plan your approach and plan how you're going to actually access that property, as well as, I think I did a video about this a long time ago. I was talking about West Branch. I took like 1 block of West Branch and I counted the parking lots.
Oh my god!
There was like 19 parking lots.
Unbelievable.
Around this like 300-acre block.
Oh,
19 parking lots.
Those turkeys are out of there.
Oh, dude.
Gone.
You might get lucky opening morning, but yeah, I wouldn't. I've killed a bunch of birds on the West Branch property, but that was like years ago. I was in high school. That was before like turkey hunting was really big around
And
here.
population went down a little bit. Yeah.
But, you look at areas down like in the Wayne or, some of these state game lands in southern Ohio, and you'll find there's a lot less places to park, which is going to deter a lot more people. You know what I mean? One of my favorite places down there, in that video I did, I compared West Branch to one of my favorite Wayne National Forest spots, and, it was almost like 1,000 acres. There was like 4 parking lots, 4 places to park. So you're going to have a lot less human traffic.
You got to put some miles on.
A lot less pressure.
But that's half the fun of public land, in my opinion. You're really working for it.
Exactly. And figuring out,
Learn a lot.
there's 4 places to park on this 1,000 acres.
Right.
I want to get back in here. Which one of these am I going to park at to get back there? Being able to plan all that out is part of e-scouting. But, you're not going to kill turkeys. You could get lucky. Like, I almost killed a turkey a couple years ago by just looking at a map, showing up, and, like, I almost killed a bird. I actually missed him. But, most of the time, you're going to want to use e-scouting as a supplement to actual turkey scouting. There's going to be a bunch of situations where you don't have that opportunity. Like this Kentucky hunt I'm going on, I'm not going to make it down there before turkey season starts.
Right.
So, I'm kind of really just going to rely on electronic scouting to put me in the best position possible, and hopefully I'll be able to pivot and make moves, in the moment while I'm down there. But
how long are you going down there?
A week.
That's pretty. First day goes like crap. You just learned everything you need to know, pretty much put yourself in a better position day 2.
It is big down there, dude.
I bet.
It is big.
I bet.
So I live in Ohio, and I haven't even scratched the surface on the Wayne National Forest. So
No.
going down for a week to hunt the Daniel Boone National Forest, it's going to be tough. But I got some people down there that, some locals that are going to help me out a little bit. We'll probably actually bring them on, Jason and his son.
That would be sweet.
We'll probably bring them on the podcast after that week down there. I think that
real Kentucky accents.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Holler boys.
But I mean, when it comes to e-scouting, if you can e-scout, but you're e-scouting something down the road, or even e-scouting your private land that you've been hunting for years, like nothing beats just like getting out in the field before turkey season and actually scouting.
And hearing some gobbles.
Exactly. It's really hard to do, and I know it gets overlooked a lot, and I don't think a lot of people do it, but preseason turkey scouting kills turkeys.
100%.
Yeah, and, if I go out, it's a little early still, but like April 10th, April 12th, something like that, I may get out on the weekends, crack of dawn, hit a couple properties and listen, and if I don't hear nothing, maybe I'll go try public down the road, or I'll go try a couple other properties, and, I'll do that probably 4 or 5 times, 4 or 5 different mornings before turkey season actually starts, so that I want to at least have 2 or 3 spots where I know there are birds, which is what I didn't do last year. I put cameras out, and I just kind of relied on that. And you saw how successful I was. No, I wasn't. So I'm going to make sure I do that this year a lot more, just to, help me out and try and ensure.
Them 2 first days go really quick.
Say that again?
Them 2 first days go really quick.
Oh.
The 2 prime days, and then day 3 comes like, I don't have a bird. Your mind's scrambling. You're like,
yep.
Oh, I didn't do this. What do I do now? I've all my spots I thought are X-nayed. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to me last year.
And then you become a breakdown. And
that's exactly what happened to me last year, because I
lose focus.
I can't remember an opening morning when I didn't hear a turkey gobble. And last year, opening morning, I go out, nothing. And I'm just like, oh, that hurts.
Crap.
It was a great morning, too.
Oh,
like 60 degrees. Like,
I've had a lot of rainy opening mornings.
What's that?
I've had a lot of rainy opening mornings.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember a few of them.
But I've killed birds on them too. I don't.
Yeah, they don't mind the rain. I've had one of the funnest turkey hunting days I've ever had. I didn't kill a bird, but I had a bunch of birds gobbling off the roost.
Mm-hmm.
There's this old like carport back in the woods.
Yeah.
On one of the properties I hunt, and it just started downpouring, dude. Thunder, lightning, just crash. And I get under that carport, and every time that thunder hit, you could hear birds gobbling in the rain.
Oh,
every time that
back.
thunder hit.
That's awesome.
It was cool, man. And I sat under that carport dry as a bone while it's just downpouring. Blew right over. I didn't have a very good day after that. I think the turkeys actually got quiet after that, but that was pretty fun sitting in that spring rain.
That's awesome, yeah. Where's the camera when we needed it then, huh?
Yeah,
That'd have been a sweet video.
I filmed it on my phone, but I don't think you could hear anything.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, so that, if you want to be successful this year, that's what I would probably try to focus on. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to do a bunch of e-scouting for my trips down south and really try and hone in on some locations. And then around home here, I need to get out in the field a lot more before turkey season starts.
I'm definitely going to use that hybrid mappage to really start marking out some spots.
Yep.
Now that I know that topography is going to help me.
Yeah, I wish we could actually do this. Maybe we'll do one of these where like
we get some mappage.
Yeah, we actually record the screen
about.
Or something like that and show it because when we get off here, Bryce, we'll talk. I'll show you exactly what I mean. But for the listeners, just high diversity, a bunch of different cover types merging together. The more diverse the habitat and the landscape, the more hills, the more topography there is, the more birds you're going to have. So you're
more
looking for diversity of everything.
More habitats means more food.
Yep, exactly.
Food, birds. Yep.
More habitat means more food, more cover, more roosting sites, more breeding, more brood cover. Like the closer all that is together, you're going to have a lot more concentration. Like I said, you're going to find turkeys anywhere. But if you want to get into the spot where there just seems like there's a ton of birds, you're looking for something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then based on those topography lines, you could pretty much mark on an X exactly where they're going to be roosting, And those toms are smart, man. They roost in locations for several reasons, right? One is, being able to get up into that roost. It's got a nice branch. They're safe. They're off the ground, high enough to where they feel comfortable.
Can see a lot.
Well, the big thing that I think, there's not a lot of research on, but in my opinion, or what I would assume, is that they're using topography as like an acoustic funnel or whatever you want to call it, like a megaphone. So they're going to put themselves in locations where they know their gobbles are going to travel as far as possible.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
So being on the side of a ridge like that, where you have multiple valleys coming in, that look like a turkey foot, where you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And if they're in that central location, every time they gobble, those gobbles are going to travel down all those valleys and hit all those ridges. So every hen all the way up and down there is going to hear them. Where if they're roosted on the backside of that ridge, their gobbles aren't going to... You hear it in the spring. You could have a bird right on the other side of the ridge from you at 50 yards. Sounds like he's a quarter mile away.
Right.
They need to put themselves in a spot where their gobbles are actually going to carry. So by looking at topography, you could almost, like right here, if I was going to scream and I wanted people to hear me...
Right there.
This is where I'd stand.
That's so smart. That's crazy how evolution does that.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing about turkey hunting, right? Is you're trying to make these gobblers do the opposite of what nature wants them to do.
Right. I think that's so cool about turkey hunting. When somebody told me that the first time when I was younger, I was like, no way.
Turkey hunting, to me, it's
awesome.
Like I love deer hunting, dude. Deer hunting's a thing. Like, I love it. It's
an addiction.
It's an addiction. It's like hardcore to me. It's like it's something I take very seriously and I get very obsessed with unhealthily. But turkey season hits you different, right?
It does.
It's different. It's like springtime. It's like happier. It's not that it's not as intense, or there's more of like a romanticism or something that comes with turkey
spirituality
hunting.
Maybe even whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
Majestic.
But yes, it feels like turkey hunting, and it's springtime, and you got the spring peepers and the owls hooting. It feels like that's what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah, I agree.
What we were talking about before, though, like in the spring, what nature intends is that gobbler gobbles and all the hens come to him. Well, that's kind of what is, like you just said, what is so cool about turkey hunting is like you got to be so good at talking to a turkey and having a conversation with him that you're tricking him into
coming to you.
Yeah, going against his biology.
Yeah, that's
right?
Awesome.
And it's different. Like you don't have a conversation like that with a deer when you call a deer in, or with if you're duck hunting. I'm not much of a duck hunter, but I doubt you feel like you're actually talking to those ducks and they're talking back.
I agree. It's way different. They respond. Their response is what is key in that feeling of turkey.
Yeah, when I'm, I gotta imagine it's kind of like elk hunting.
I wouldn't know.
When I'm yelping to a gobbler and then he gobbles and I can feel like
that rumble in your chest.
No, you can tell what that turkey is feeling, what mood he's in, by how he sounds or how often he's gobbling, and you can literally pick up like, oh, this turkey is ready to roll, or you can tell he's gobbling but he's not really into it. Like, how do I get him fired up? It's a really cool
being able to hear the depths of sound. Oh, he's coming closer.
Yeah,
he's fired up. Here he comes.
Yeah, and then when they get like
closer,
within 60 yards, you hear that like that spitting and drumming. Man, it's
nothing sadder than hearing that
goosebumps,
gobble go away.
I'm excited right now, dude. Oh, I can't wait.
I got to do a bunch of e-scouting for anything. Talking about calling here, and this is a personal question, really, not just for everybody, but they can take it as they please. But you just gave me that new slate call.
Yeah, I got another one for you.
What tips can you give me when I'm calling in that gobbler?
So you want like beginner tips? You want like beginner tips, or you want like?
I think I got the beginner stuff down, but let's give an example. What if say I'm calling first thing in the morning, like I'm just a hen that got down the roost and is ready to mate. I'm purring, trying to get something to gobble back at me. And that gobbler, I hear him. He's pretty faint, but he hears me. Maybe he answers once or twice, and then I don't hear him answer. Or, for another example, maybe he came in a little bit. I heard him get a little louder, and then he started turning the other way. What kind of calls can I make with this new slate call that you gave me that will help me keep him coming to me?
So it depends.
Outside of purring or something new, maybe, or
yeah. So like it's hard because unless you're like there and you can like feel what that turkey's feeling.
Right. It's hard to explain.
I'm trying to think of like a situation where like, so let's pretend that turkey, he's gobbled a few times. Say he's gobbled 3 or 4 times over like 10 minutes. You called to him a bunch. He hasn't moved, but he keeps responding to you.
Right. Perfect.
A lot of times what that means to me is that bird is probably in a strutting zone he really likes and doesn't want to leave, or he's with hens, right?
Correct.
I'm probably going to try and do like one of 3 things, and none of them are like an actual type of call. Like, really, if you can run a yelp, on any type of call effectively and get that cadence down, you really don't need much more. I mean, obviously you're going to pull in more birds if you can sound more realistic, but, like we talked about in previous podcasts, like them 2 and 3 year old birds, man, like if you can yelp and you can do a couple cuts, like that's deadly, man. And really your biggest, I guess the thing that's going to make you the most successful is knowing when to use those and how to use those. So like the one of 3 things that I'm going to do is if that bird's not coming in, I feel like he's, hung up somewhere, I'm either going to, get quiet, which is probably my number one tactic. I'm going to stop calling, or I'm going to try to call from a different angle, maybe like cut the distance a little bit or come at him, from the west instead of the east to sound like a different bird. Maybe there's something between, me and the gobbler, that a creek or, big down log or something that he doesn't want to cross. Or I'm going to back up and start calling like I'm leaving. And that might get him, put a fire under his butt to come after me and chase me. He'll be like, oh, where the heck's she going, So those would be my three options.
Okay.
But let's talk about getting silent, because I think that's the easiest thing to do. Sometimes you're not in a position where you can, move around a bird. You got property lines. Sometimes you're not in a position where you can get up and move the other way, It's a lot easier when you got multiple people hunting with you too. But getting silent and just putting those calls down probably has killed me more birds than any other thing I've implemented, I guess.
Right. Overcalling will hurt you, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going through them birds' minds, but I know people tend to personify them a lot. But what I think happens is, sometimes the best calling is just not calling. Put that call down, pick your gun up, and wait half hour, 40 minutes.
You got to play stubborn back.
Exactly, and he's gonna get to a point. I guarantee he's gonna gobble a couple times after that. Once you stop calling, frustrated gobbles, hey, where you at? Why aren't you coming? Why aren't you still calling? And he's gonna get to a point where he's like, she forgot about me. She might be, maybe she's going the other way.
I'm fed up.
Yep, and he's gonna come looking for you sometimes. But that would be my first thing I would try. I would try and get quiet for a while. And if 40 minutes goes by and he never shows up, then I might stand up and go try to cut the distance and look for him.
Right.
Depending on the situation. But if he's still gobbling, if he's gotten quiet. But a lot of times if they're gobbling a lot and then all of a sudden they stop gobbling, that means they're probably moving. He could be on his way. And I'm guilty of this too, but I think if I was going to, the biggest thing, Bryce, is don't overcall.
Right.
Overcalling will kill you.
I think that's how that big 5-year-old, the first time I ever killed, came in. Because we'd call once an hour.
Yeah.
And he finally, maybe twice.
Yep.
He finally came in.
Yep.
Quiet as could be, pissed off.
Yep.
That was it.
I think a lot of times when you call too much, or you really get them gobblers fired up, you're cutting and yelping and he's gobbling and hammering every time you hit it, he's expecting you to come to him.
Right.
He's like, oh, she's into it. She's on her way,
Never know when that hen, the ridge double away from me across from him, a real hen maybe starts firing up way closer, and then he's like, oh, screw that.
Yep. And that's what's tough is, that's what I run into a lot, especially in southern Ohio, is where you'll get a bird gobbling. You get him really fired up. Well, now every hen in the area is listening.
Running to him.
Yeah. So half the time they're going to get picked up by a hen somewhere along the way, which happens a lot. But, like I said, though, I calling less is going to kill more birds than calling more. Okay.
Well, I think, in my opinion, one of the most important time, I bet you agree, to call is right at the beginning, that first bit of daylight, that hen reaching the ground.
Yes.
Now, my question is, do you want to be doing more soft calls with some purring, correct, when they're coming down? And then after you get that little bit of daylight, then you hit them with something loud?
So
or what? Maybe give me an example of your morning routine run through for your first calls. I don't know.
Yeah, so my thing, what I usually go by, I heard some old turkey hunter say this a long time ago, and I've just kind of stuck with this, is as soon as you can make out the lines of the leaves on the ground, when it starts getting light out,
yeah,
that's when you want to make your first calls.
Okay.
And usually what I'm doing is just some tree yelps, just some real soft. I got a glass call, so it's not going to be soft, but just some. Oh, not like that. Just some.
4 or 5 of them.
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
But that's all you need to do. Just 3 or 4 a couple times in a row. And just let it marinate. Because, that's what those hens are doing. If you ever, that's a big thing I tell a lot of newer turkey hunters is when you're out there, just make sure you're listening to other hens and try and listen to that and try and replicate how they sound. If I got, in the morning, I got a hen just going off, which I've heard, like right at daybreak, just cutting, cackling, hits the ground, and she's just yelping her head off, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try and replicate exactly what she's doing. If all the hens are being quiet, I don't want to be the one hen that's screaming in the woods. It's going to seem weird, right? So I'm going to try and be a real quiet turkey. But for the majority of hunts, you're going to start out with some tree yelps, some purrs, while those birds are still on the roost, if you're close enough for them to even hear you.
Right.
A lot of times in the morning, you might not be anywhere near a bird, or you may be 100 yards away, and something that quiet, they may not even hear you 100 yards away, you know what I mean? So, like I said, just trying to replicate what those other hens are doing around you, if there are any hens around you. One of my favorite things to do, though, right off the roost, I carry a turkey wing into the woods with me usually. Or you can use your hat.
I'm following.
Yes, and replicate the sound of a turkey flapping her wings up in the tree, stretching out, and flying down to the ground and hitting the ground and kicking leaves around. So a lot of times, I've killed turkeys right off the roost without ever touching a turkey call and just sounding like hitting the ground and then maybe a couple times to sound like scratching in the leaves.
Right.
And that's it. Like, that's going to sound so much more realistic than you sitting there at 5:45 in the morning.
Every 5 minutes.
Yeah, every 5 minutes. Like, read the situation, right? Just like anything else in life. Read the room, man. Like, nobody's screaming right now. Why are you doing it?
Yeah,
You want to be like all the other turkeys.
I'll be honest. A lot of the hens I've seen walk by me live action, they're kind of just been like a click, click, click. And take some more steps, click, click.
Just clucks.
I've heard one purr, but they were like feeding. Now, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. They're purring when they're feeding?
They purr for a lot of things. It's like a content sound.
Like a safety call, kind of.
Yeah, like I feel good right now.
I'm safe, yeah.
Yeah, I think. And they do, cluck, purr, cluck, purr. Mm-hmm. That's like they're keeping tabs on each other. And that's a good sound to use. If you ever got a gobbler 60 yards, 80 yards, kind of held up, and he's gobbling, but he won't come the rest of the way. Say you tried to be quiet for 40 minutes, and he's still gobbling, but he won't move towards you. Sometimes I'll just kick some leaves to sound like a bird scratching, or I'll do some clucks and some purrs, some real faint calls, and, try and sound like I'm ignoring him. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've had birds where I hit that purr just on a diaphragm, and go, and then they come walking right in because they're like, hey, she's not paying attention to me. What's going on over there?
Yeah, she's just in her own land feeding, having a good time.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
You won't play hard to get. But another really good way is sometimes, a lot of times when those turkeys are henned up, right, like we were talking about earlier, it's hard to pull them away from those hens.
Super hard.
So kind of a tactic that I like to use a lot is if I know there's hens, if I know a bird is henned up, like I saw a bunch of hens fly out of the roost with this time, and I know they're all together, right? I'm going to start getting wild with the calls. I'm going to be cutting, maybe do some kikis, some
buck wild,
some fighting purrs. I might do some like,
I don't know what kikis or biting purrs are. Oh, yeah, okay.
And try and really piss them mature, dominant hens off. And if those hens come looking for me to kick my butt, that Tom's probably going to be right behind her.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
try and replicate. If you got a hen that's, like I said, if you got a hen that's being loud, whatever she does, do exactly what she does. If she yelps 7 times and then cuts twice, do the exact same thing. And she'll respond to you, and she'll come walking right in, and she might bring a tom with her.
Here's a good one for you. This is a story that really was upsetting one turkey season.
How long ago was this?
Before 2020.
A little while ago.
Way back. High turkey population. We killed a lot of birds that year.
Let's hear it.
Hen comes in. The best thing you can have, right? Some live bait is what I call it.
Live action.
Live bait. It's like having a minnow on a hook.
Yep.
This hen comes in. There used to be this little dust mound right on the edge of the ridge that we would sit on. We'd sit back because it was a big strutting area. That hen comes, dusts her wings, and then she just sits right there. I don't know if she'd already been henned up or whatnot, but I thought for sure, okay, I got this big mama hen coming up. She's going to dust, make all this noise. She's clucking a little bit. She just sat there all day, baked in the sun, and never seen a male.
Really?
So frustrating. I got so hyped up. I'm like, there's no way I won't not see a male come up here, Jake or Tom.
Well, that's why they call it hunting, Bryce.
It is.
It's tough, man. Here's a question for you. So if what is your favorite thing to do if, you're in Southern Ohio, you're hunting all day, say it's 10:45.
Okay.
And you have yet to hear a gobble.
I'm hopping on top of the ridges and I'm walking I'd say almost every 175 yards, and I'm calling again.
Trying to hear a gobble?
Yes.
Are you more of a guy who's like, I'm going to just run and gun and see if I can find a bird that wants to play? Or are you a guy who's like, I'm going to sit down in this one spot, call every hour, and maybe I'll bring in a quiet bird?
I've done both. What I want to do and have done the last year I hunted, and what I want to do going into this year, is start out sitting and waiting. But when that 10 o'clock mark hits, 10:30, I get that last couple hours to hunt, and I still haven't had one come in, I'm moving.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I tend to.
I would say in the past I have sat more and waited it out more than I have run and gunned.
Yeah, I think it depends on where I'm hunting too, though.
100%.
If I got a lot of land to roam,
you're running.
I might just rather run and gun. But if I'm hunting the back 40, where there's not a lot of room to walk, I'd probably rather sit and just call. But I've had luck both ways. I really have. I
have too. But like I said, I think in the last podcast, I have turkey hunted more private than I have public so far. So I was used to, when I started there, hunting down there, to just sitting all day. But then as I slowly explored the public that butted up to there, I was like, shoot, that's where we're calling all the birds from anyways. Let's go.
Yeah.
10 o'clock hits, we're gone.
Yeah. What kind of call you usually running? What's your favorite call to use?
I've always been mouth call. I love going back and forth with a mouth call and a box call.
Box call.
I think the pitches are great. I've never had a slate till this one you gave me.
See, I think box calls are probably my least favorite.
I don't know. They get loud. Purring on a box call is extremely hard, and that's why I taught myself
very difficult
how to purr via mouth, because I figured it out quicker.
Do you do the throat gargle or do you do the tongue?
The tongue.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's harder.
It is harder, but I picked up mouth calling really weirdly out of nowhere. I killed that big bird when I was younger. One of the neighbor guys, property over, came over to check it out, and he had killed a couple jakes. He used to take people on hunts too, but so he was big time, and he just gave me 2 calls, some generic ones, and he put it in my mouth, told me to sound like you're saying chalk, and I just like that.
Just put them in your mouth, huh?
And yes, I put them right in my mouth, and it worked. Where my buddies all around me were like, what the? It took me 5 months to figure it out. Well, it took me 5 tries.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was, man. I've used a diaphragm. That's my kind of go-to. I've used one ever since I started turkey hunting, and I ain't no competition caller, but I have no problem making a noise or cutting or yelping.
I've had most success using different calls because I think it really does sound like different hens to them.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, there's 3 hot babes."
Yep.
And they're ready. I'm going.
Yep. So that's a big thing that I love to talk about, especially when it comes to, that's why if you're not a turkey hunter, a lot of people don't understand why do you have to have a turkey vest?
Me? Didn't have one forever.
Yeah. Well, it's like you got to have multiple versions of every call.
I just had one in each pocket.
Yeah.
Pant pocket. And
I got to really slim down this year because of the new vest I got, but usually I'm carrying at least 2 pot calls, 4 strikers. I carry a box call with me. I barely ever use it though. And then 4 different diaphragms. And with that amount of calls, it's a lot of gear to carry in, but you sound like an infinite number of hens. You can from high pitch to low pitch to raspy to no raspy to whatever you want to sound like. If you have one pot call, I would recommend at least carrying 3 different strikers of different materials and different tips, because you're going to be able to get different sounds just using different strikers on the same pot call or the same friction call. So,
and maybe you might not sound like a different group of hens or multiple groups of multiple hens in one spot. You might just be hitting that one pitch that he hasn't heard yet, and he's like, "What's that?"
Exactly, right?
Let's go find that out.
There are days where you can't get a bird to gobble with a diaphragm call, and as soon as you put a striker to a slate call, boom, he hammers at it every time. Then you sit down, put that diaphragm call in your mouth, and start calling to him, and he doesn't gobble. So you hit it with the slate again, and he gobbles to that. It's just sometimes it depends. They got different preferences from day to day, and you got to make sure you got the one that is going to get him fired up. You know what I mean? And that's a real thing. A lot of people are like, "Oh, that's not," It definitely is a thing. I've seen it with a lot of turkeys where one call works and one call doesn't.
I agree. And maybe that gets you trying that 4th striker on your 3rd slate.
Yep.
Following your 2nd box call. Who knows? But.
Yeah, man. It's a science, dude.
It is.
Yeah, I like being able to have all those options and be able to, work through those throughout the day to find what works. What we haven't talked about yet is locator calls.
The crow.
How much luck have you had with those?
Never used one.
What? Mr. Professional Turkey Hunter over here?
I'm far from pro, but I've just never had one. Never used one. I've never even been shown. I don't know nothing. Hell, I don't even know how to use. If you give me one, I wouldn't even know how to sound like a crow.
Locator calls are pretty important. Did I give you a crow call?
You did.
Okay. So to me, my favorite, I got 2 that I always carry 3. The 2 I use the most, crow call and an owl hooter. Okay. And then I usually carry something like I don't know, like a pileated woodpecker or hawk scream, or a lot of guys use coyote howlers or something like that, or be able to do it with your voice at least. But the whole point of a locator call is, nobody's really 100% positive why they work, why making an owl hoot makes a turkey gobble, why using a crow call, going caw, caw, makes a turkey gobble.
It's got to be territory, no? Like, they're fired up, they want to be dominant. It's like, get out of my territory.
Just, I think they probably don't like other birds, other big types of birds, or
maybe
loud noises. They call it a shock gobble. So what I think it is they're so pent up with sexual frustration during the spring that they're chomping at the bit to at any loud noise, because they jump the gun almost. They think it's a hen, and they're like, "Oh, I feel stupid now." That's what I picture whenever I see them shock gobble. That may be wrong, but I think you go, you hit that caw, 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 and they they're just so fired up, and they're just like, any loud noise. Like, I've had them gobble. I killed a bird maybe 10 years ago. The way I found out where he was, I slammed my car door. Boom. Gobble, 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 up on the ridge.
No way.
I swear. They gobble at anything.
Maybe it's like an emotional thing. Like, I don't want anything to be louder than me. I'm the loudest in the world right now.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know how many emotions turkeys have. But,
I know, they have small heads.
A lot of people think they just hate like crows and owls, but they gobble at coyote howls, which I'm sure they don't like coyotes, but they gobble at anything.
Well, you said earlier they were gobbling at thunder.
They'll gobble at thunder. They'll gobble at sirens. I've heard a lot of turkey gobbles at sirens, gunshots. I was patterning my shotgun last year, my 20 gauge. Every time I shot, I didn't hear it because I had earphones or earplugs in, but on the recording when I got home, I'm like editing, this whole shotgun pattern video. Every time I shot, bang, go, go, go. You can hear them go. I'm like, son of a, like, yeah, it was crazy. But they'll gobble at anything, man. But
that's funny.
But it's good for us as turkey hunters because, all the e-scouting you do, all the foot scouting you do, all the, before the season scouting, a lot of times you still aren't prepared, right? You get out in the woods, it starts getting daylight, and, nothing gobbles. Maybe 8 o'clock rolls around, you hear a gobble, and he's 250 yards away, and you're in the worst spot ever, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if you're going to make a move on that bird, you want to be able to keep tabs on where he's at, but not have him come to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So that's where these locator calls come in. I want to be able to hit that crow call, caw, caw, gobble, gobble, gobble. I'm all right, I can keep moving. Or he's just still over there, or he's out on the corner of that field. And then find a spot where I think I'll be able to call him into here and get a shot. Sit down, get set up, and then start calling like a hen.
Gotcha. Get your decoys out.
Yes.
Now, are some of them calls you mentioned outside of the crow? What were some of the other ones you mentioned? The owl. I know the owl's a mouth call, but what were some of the other ones? Coyote's a mouth.
Well, an owl, I have an actual owl hooter that I use. I have a crow call that I use. You can buy coyote howling.
What were some of the other ones that you thought you mentioned some
like
more?
Like a hawk.
Hawk. Are those all?
Pileated woodpecker. Yep.
Are those all mouth calls?
They're all mouth. No, they're all like you blow in.
Yes, like a
call.
mouthpiece.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, that's what I was curious of. I've never seen the hawk or the red woodpecker one.
It was in there.
So what do we got here now, Josh, out of the show and tell box?
All right, so I just had to pull this out. So this is a, I don't even know where I bought this, but this is a pileated woodpecker / hawk call. So I can do both.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So I'll try not to blow your guys' eardrums out. So have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, in the woods. Yeah,
that's a pileated woodpecker or hawk.
Okay.
It's like a red-tailed hawk.
Right.
So that'll get turkeys to gobble as well. And sometimes sometimes the owl won't work, the crow won't work, and you use something different like that, and you'll get them to shot gobble. But my favorite by far is the owl.
Okay.
I use the owl in the morning. If I don't know if birds aren't gobbling off the roost, it's a quiet morning. I'm gonna hit that owl hooter, while I still think they're up in the tree. Try and get them to gobble. Let me know where they're at. I'm gonna use the owl hooter throughout the mid morning probably. If I'm trying to locate a bird, I'll switch to the crow call throughout the midday, I think, and then in the evenings, which we haven't talked about yet either, I use a owl call probably more than anything when those birds fly back up in the roost, and they call that putting a bird to bed. If you want to have the best chance at success for killing a turkey, the best thing you could do is put a bird to bed the evening before your hunt.
Know where he's at.
Yep. And the best way to do that, go out to your properties, where it's legal. I'll go out, before opening day or before the weekend when I'm expecting to hunt. get out there about a half hour before dark. Wait until I'm pretty sure them turkeys are up in the roost. They've gotten comfortable. They've been up there for 10, 15 minutes. It's getting pretty dark. And I slam that owl hooter. And hopefully, it's pretty easy to get them to do it if you're in a spot where turkeys are. But you'll get them to gobble, gobble, gobble up on that roost. And, you can kind of work in and figure out exactly where those birds are roosted.
Okay, here's my 2 questions off that.
Go ahead.
1, if you're doing those spot calls with that owl hooter in the evening, do you want to be doing that on top of the ridge? Or no, because you might be spooking them before they fly to that 3rd waypoint? Or do you want to be in the bottoms?
So it depends. I mean, as long as you're just not where they're at. I could be on the ridge over from them. If I'm trying to roost birds, I kind of want to be the same way those turkeys want to be, in a spot where I think my sound's going to carry the furthest.
So maybe in the halfway point.
You might.
That
I tend to try to get up on top. And get to a spot where I hit that owl hooter, I'm going to hit a bunch of valleys.
Right.
And a bunch of ridge tops and hopefully get a bird to gobble. But in reality, most of the time I'm driving my truck on these dirt roads, down in public land. And I'm parking every quarter mile and getting out and hooting from the road, to see if I can get a bird to gobble. Or if I'm hunting, private properties, I got a couple of my access points. I'm not really going that deep into them to try and roost a bird unless I'm hearing a bird and I want to pinpoint exactly where he's at. I'm not going out of my way tromping through the forest, maybe bumping birds out of their roost to try to roost them. I may, try to work out closer to them, get within 200 yards, get them to gobble again. That way I got a pretty, sometimes down there in those hollers in southern Ohio, you'll hear a gobble, but you're like, I don't even know where that was.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So being able to actually pinpoint him is the point of roosting a bird. So you want to, the bird I killed 2 years ago in the Wayne, I hit that owl hooter. It was just getting dark. Boom, he gobbled, but it was out there. And I stood there for 2 minutes, trying to think, I swear it was this way, I swear it was this way. And I finally convinced myself, so I walked about 100 yards in that direction, hit the owl hooter again, boom, he gobbled again. And it was a lot closer. So I'm like, all right, I'm going in the right direction. So I moved another maybe 60, 80 yards, and I'm out in a field, and this ridge top keeps going, and then it turns into woods. And I was pretty sure he was out at the end of this big ridge, but he could have been across the valley on the ridge over. So what I did was I kind of worked my way out at an angle from him so that if he was across the ridge, I'd hear it more to the right. And if he was on the ridge I was on, I'd hear it more to the left. I wanted to kind of put myself in a position where I could triangulate that sound.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if he was directly between me and that other ridge and he gobbles, it's still hard to tell, is he on my ridge or that ridge? Because those ridges aren't that far apart.
Right.
So being able to, triangulate yourself almost and get him to gobble again, and I heard he gobbled, and it was, pretty obvious, oh, he's on my ridge. I heard him off to the left, so he's out there.
Okay.
That next morning, I almost knew exactly what tree he was in. So that next morning, I just went in well before dark, set up, and I didn't even have to call. He flew down and came walking right in front of me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now here's my second question.
Go ahead.
Is the crow, hawk, or woodpecker, should you keep them for morning locators, or do you think, I would assume maybe crow would be the only other best one for evenings? Or just owl?
I just use an owl, man.
Haven't done anything
that
else,
or, I would probably only use the crow mostly during the daytime. And to be honest, I haven't had a lot of luck with crows, with the crow call. Okay. I don't think I've had a lot of luck whatsoever, honestly, in my 15 years of turkey hunting. I've had a ton of luck using owl hooters. I think if you can't get something to gobble with an owl hooter in the evening, maybe try a coyote howl. you want to use natural sounds.
Right. Obviously.
There aren't a lot of crows calling 15 minutes after
8 o'clock.
sunset.
Yeah.
So that's why the owl or a coyote howl or something like that is going to be pretty natural. And, I see a lot of guys use that coyote and they'll get them to gobble doing that. Yeah, man.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, so. But, yeah, I mean, we pretty much kind of hit everything a little bit. Maybe we'll dive into this stuff more specifically, a little deeper.
Yeah, I
on
think
future
we got some
podcasts.
good intros today.
Yeah, not sure, but we'll come up with something good to talk about. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Make sure you guys go to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Go to my Instagram, hit the Linktree link. You can see all, that'll give you access to my Facebook, TikTok, all my social media accounts, all the Buckeye Bowhunter stuff. So make sure you check that out. Follow us on all the social media. Do all the things that everybody always tells you to do. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. Whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, please like or whatever you got to do. Helps us out as well. Hopefully, we wish you guys the best of luck this spring. Hopefully everybody shoots a bunch of turkeys.
Heck yeah.
Yep. And we will keep you guys informed with what goes on with us. And with that said, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks everybody.